Daybell told the judge this morning that it's his choice not to present that evidence. Daybell was convicted yesterday in the murders of his first wife, Tammy, and 2 children of his second wife, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 261 points, but the NASDAQ has dropped 205 points. And coming up, our KSL weather looks like a pretty sunny weekend. That's next. KSL News 101.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Put your phone on D&D, that means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always sing with me. So put your phone on D&D, that means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always remember this beat.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Angie's List is now Angie, and we've heard a lot of theories about why.
I thought it was an eco move. Fewer words, less paper.
No, it was so you could say it faster.
No, it's to be more iconic.
Must be a tech thing.
But those aren't quite right. It's because now you can compare upfront prices, book a service instantly, and even get your project handled from start to finish.
Sounds easy.
It is, and it makes us so much more than just a list. Get started at Angie.com. That's ANGI, or download the app today.
I just elevated my checking account with Utah Community Credit Union. Tim, I'm so blown away at what I get with my elevated checking account at UCCU. I get so many benefits. I get cell phone protection and roadside assistance. The one that blows me away the most is telehealth. I actually get zero copay telehealth with my checking account from UCCU.
Did you know you also get a 0.25% loan discount? It's one of the many things. And if you like to travel or you're on the road quite a bit, a free ATM nationwide, 30,000 ATM locations that you can use while you're out.
Utah basketball star Walker Kessler and Utah Community Credit Union have come together to announce this brand new elevated checking account with more benefits, more savings, more online protections than ever before.
Yeah, there's even something for dark web monitoring, which I have never heard of before, but you can find out more by just going to uccu.com.
And open an elevated checking account online or stop by any branch.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
With big tech coming after our kids,
the inflow of illegal drugs coming to our state.
For Attorney General, we need someone we can trust to do the right thing for the right reason.
That's Derek Brown.
Derek fought to protect kids on social media.
He'll defend the Second Amendment.
Stand up to Biden when he tries to take our lands.
Derek Brown will fight to secure the border.
And that's the kind of leadership we really need.
We trust Derek Brown for Attorney General.
I'm supporting Derek Brown.
Paid for by Derek Brown for Attorney General.
Emergency traffic now brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. Here's Ricky Meeks.
The delays continue due to this serious accident southbound I-15 at Lehigh Main Street in Utah County. The stop-and-go delays are now reaching well into Draper, and in that, we do have a vehicle fire blocking a right lane of traffic after 146 South approaching the point of the mountain. So both of these issues are a problem, and this is what's causing the stop-and-go speeds from 114 South all the way to almost American Forks. So your travel plans, you need to avoid southbound I-15. The estimated clearance time of the initial accident that started this going in Lehigh is not until 2 o'clock this afternoon. So consider an alternate route like Redwood Road or the frontage road getting into Utah County, and then rejoin I-15 in American Fork or further south, or you need to consider delaying your travel time. Attention Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. Have winter conditions damaged your parking lot asphalt or concrete surfaces? Call GoPave Utah to get on their schedule. GoPaveUtah.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It'll be sunny, 78 for the high today, warming up to 87 and partly cloudy tomorrow, then 83 on Sunday. Right now, 72 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Of course, the headlines yesterday and throughout the day today have been the fallout from the conviction, 34 charges against former President Donald Trump in a New York City courtroom yesterday. Those have been the headlines. The headlines have also extended to the predictable spiking of the ball by some of those on the political left and crying foul by many of those on the political right. I think what the trial really exposed was the raw animosity and contempt that those who are on one side or the other, either for or against the former president, have for each other. And that's part of the headline problem. So we're going to spend the next few minutes going underneath those headlines, and I'm going to talk to you about what I think we should be thinking about. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, there's been a lot of processing in terms of what did and didn't happen in the courtroom, what's likely to come next, and all of those things are important. I don't want to discount that portion of the news and the process. In fact, we'll come back to that a little later in the show at 2:20. We'll look at some of the things that we know for sure and some of the things that are likely to happen in the next phase of things. But right now I want to get underneath all of that and beyond just the spiking of the ball or the crying of foul, and getting to some of the things that I think actually matter a little bit more than what that is. Clearly, it's a historic day, first time that this has happened in our nation's history with a former president of the United States with felony convictions. But there's a lot more to it. A lot of this stuff is going to ebb and flow, and of course there'll be an appeals process, and that will play out. Could it possibly be overturned? It's a possibility. What are the ramifications, the sentencing? There's all of those kinds of things that are definitely coming. The thing that I want us to get thinking about is probably some numbers that I think are more important than all the other numbers you've probably heard over the last 24 hours since the ruling by the jury was announced. And I think one of the numbers that matters and actually gives me great hope is that only 13% of the people of this country followed this trial closely. Now, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing that most people were out there living their lives, raising their families, doing their job at their places of employment, and making a difference in their community. 70% of voters said the result has no impact on how they're going to vote on the first Tuesday of November. In some ways, that's a good thing. In some ways, that has to be a moment in our history where we say, wow, that doesn't matter. At least from a pause and a think about the principles kind of perspective. But here's the number that actually gives me the most hope. So if you look at the country, there are only about 8% of Americans are really in the politics conversation every single day. Only 8% of Americans talk politics every day. The good news is 44% of Americans actually pray every day. I think that's a pretty good ratio. And that actually gives me a lot of hope in terms of where we could go as a country. I think where we really get into trouble is something that we've criticized on this show before, and that is the fact that from now until the first Tuesday of November, we are going to continue to hear, and we heard it already, that November 5th is going to be the real verdict, or that the first Tuesday of November is going to be the day that will decide the soul of the nation. This is the battle for the heart and soul of the country. And politicians, parties, candidates across the spectrum, they're going to get down, this is the most important election in our nation's history. I've said it many times. Every election is the most important because it's the only one we've got. We can't go back. We can't go into the future. So all we have is now. So, of course, it's the most important. I buy that. And there really is nothing more important than exercising the right to make your voice heard, make your vote count. But the misleading political phrase that this election is a battle for the heart and soul of America is just wrong. It's the wrong phrase. It's the wrong battle. It's the wrong war. And sadly, what we saw play out in New York yesterday and what we'll continue to see play out in the wake of the trial in New York is that people are going to claim and counterclaim this over and over again. And my point that I hope we start thinking about is that politicians claiming that a political election is for the heart and soul of the nation is making the assumption that the heart and soul of the nation belongs to political parties or to politicians or to institutions of government. And nothing, I mean nothing, could be further from the truth in this country. Heart and soul of the nation is not found in Washington, D.C. It's not stored in some vault in Fort Knox. It's not chiseled in granite in a monument somewhere. It's the people. And that's what we have to get back to. And so rather than all of the division and all of the things that are happening from a contempt standpoint, and again, the verdict and the fallout from yesterday is just exposing the deeper issue. These are just symptoms, folks. We got to get down to the real issue. And sadly, so many of our politicians just can't get out of their own way. We saw former President Trump saying that the nation's a mess. This is a disaster. We shouldn't trust the system. It's all rigged. None of that is helpful. We also had a moment today that was equally frustrating to me when President Joe Biden stepped to the podium to deliver a message to the world relating to Israel and Hamas and Gaza and spent the first 4 minutes talking about the former president and what happened in New York in the trial. That was a bad miss. Now, we're going to come back to what the president did say, because I actually think President Biden delivered an extraordinary address, tightly scripted, focused on the future of Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza, and it was excellent. And sadly, he created an equivalence. The world was watching, and he created an equivalence between the conviction of the former president and peace in the Middle East. I think that part was a mistake. We'll come back to the positive things that the president said in that address and the hope it's created in the Middle East. We'll come back to that at 2:05, so you're going to want to stick around for that as we move through. But it just shows how hard it is in today's world for people to have restraint. Restraint always works. Speak in anger, you always deliver the best speech you ever lived to regret. And we see that play out over and over again. And so the thing that I really hope that we start thinking again about in our world today is actually where we started this week, Memorial Day. And the fact that Memorial Day, when established, had the instruction for every citizen of the nation, wherever they were, at 3 p.m. local time, to pause for a moment, not of silence, but of remembrance. Remembrance. And it's getting past all of the shouting, all of the chatter and clamor, all of the positioning and posturing, the us versus them. They're not just wrong, they're wrong and evil. If we can get back to remembering that we're all in this together. This is one country. And regardless of who wins an election or who loses a trial, we still have to all move forward together. You can't do it with half the country. We all have to move this thing forward together. And that's what we got to rethink, because otherwise, all of this noise will lead us to apathy, which culminates in indifference, and that wrecks the future of the republic. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. 1 hour.
Daybell is standing motionless through all 9 verdicts.
2 verdicts.
First time in history that a former U.S. president has been tried on criminal charges.
An Idaho jury returns its decision just moments before Donald Trump is found guilty of all 34 counts in New York. When it's important and is breaking live, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede. Except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Emergency traffic continues on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. We still have 4 left and center lanes of travel blocked southbound I-15 in Utah County due to this nasty crash at Lehigh Main Street. It has caused stop-and-go delays backing into Salt Lake County. In addition to that, we have a vehicle fire blocking a right lane, and it's in the cleanup stages. It's after 146 South near the point of the mountain, so right lane's blocked there, and a crash southbound I-15 at Bangerter Highway. As a result, you have delays backing past 123rd South. Again, this is not expected to be completely cleared for another hour. You need to delay your travel time trying to get into Utah County, or use an alternate route such as Traverse Ridge, the Frontage Road, or even Redwood Road. Or if you can give yourself extra travel time, at least do that, because these delays will take some time to get through. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have, because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan sea salt body wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-838-6161. That's 800-838-6161. 800-838-6161.
Odds are, if you have a 401k, it's set up with your payroll provider or an insurance company. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and if you're using your payroll provider or an insurance company for your 401k, the employer may be overpaying for the plan, the employees may have blasé investment options, and those blasé investment options may cost more than they should. Not with Trajan Wealth. Call us today, 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
Hello, this is Congresswoman Celeste Malloy. I'm running for re-election to defend Utah's conservative values in Washington, D.C. Like you, I'm tired of government that spends too much, listens too little, and makes all of our lives harder. In Washington, I'm pushing for better ideas to keep the federal government involvement in our lives to a minimum. Let's keep the government in its proper lane. Keep me in Washington so I can keep fighting for you, because we are just getting started.
Paid for by Celeste for Congress.
For over 22 years, speaking on business on KSL News Radio has been a beloved tradition, celebrating our heroic business leaders and Utah consumers who have helped build one of the strongest state economies in the nation. Now, under the stewardship of the Salt Lake Chamber and hosted by Chamber President and CEO Derek Miller, the program continues to shine a spotlight on those who make Utah's business environment dynamic and thriving. With his expertise and passion, Derek brings the stories of our business community to life. As part of the Salt Lake Chamber, Speaking on Business is proud to continue its legacy of highlighting inspiring stories, trends, and special guests. Support Utah businesses now and be part of Utah's thriving economy. More information can be found at slchamber.com. That's slchamber.com.
Any Hour Services can help unclog any drain in your house, whether you have a backup, a clog, or a slow drain you want fixed. Call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, President Biden outlined a proposal from Israel that could lead to an end to the fighting in Gaza and the release of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. Second, Chad Daybell has decided not to present mitigating evidence in the penalty phase of his murder trial that might have spared him the death penalty. And third, former President Trump vowing to appeal his convictions in a New York courtroom. 72 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Winston Churchill once said that we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. Now, sacred places have graced our urban landscapes for generations as a reminder of our shared human journey. However, many of these historic churches, synagogues, and mosques now really face an existential crisis. Their very existence is being threatened by dwindling membership rolls, crumbling infrastructures, a lot of repairs needed. But as beacons of spirituality and civic engagement, the potential loss of these hallowed spaces would leave a major void in our communities. Many of those communities are already grappling with real big challenges and disconnection. So it's time for a call to action that transcends religious affiliation, employing us to really join forces and safeguard some of these treasured sacred spaces. Bob Yeager's the co-founder of Partners for Sacred Places. Previously, Bob worked with the Philadelphia Historic Preservation Corporation as Senior Vice President for the Historic Religious Properties Program. He's also co-author of several books and articles on religious property preservation. And this is a crucial conversation. I have been so looking forward to this conversation. And Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to join you today.
So give us a little bit of the state of the state when it comes to these sacred places around the country, the numbers that you've been looking at, and kind of where we are in terms of what we might lose.
Well, thanks for asking that question. And, you know, there's two sides to the coin. On one side, we've learned that they bring a lot of community value. They have a lot of economic value to their communities, and we've done some research with a university on their importance to neighborhoods and to the towns and cities where they sit. So they have a lot of value. On the other hand, they're increasingly vulnerable when, in many cases, their memberships are smaller than they once were, and they may not have the money to keep their buildings in good repair. So that's part of our message, is to say to America that a lot of the churches in your backyard may need some help. So what can we do to step forward and kind of talk to them and be aware of the help that they could use?
Yeah, and so let's break that down just a little bit. One of the things that you point out in your piece is that many of these places have served a real important civic role over the years as well, and whether that's been a place for youth groups to gather, or AA meetings to take place, or even voting and those kinds of things to take place. And now we're starting to lose that again. What does that look like in terms of the disconnect from community?
Well, you know, that's a really good point. We call that contribution their halo effect. We love that play on words, you know, and if you see a church or a synagogue or a temple on a map, there are radiating circles of influence because they've opened up their buildings, they've shared their space. When people come and take part in events at the church or synagogue, they spend money in the neighborhood. So if you add all that up, for an urban church, it's $1.7 million a year in economic impact. And for a rural place, it's about $735,000. So there's this enormous impact. However, if that congregation's becoming smaller and they have a hard time maintaining that building, there may be some spaces they really can't share anymore. There may be leaks in the roof, or the bathroom may need repair, or the kitchen's not what it was, you know. And so that's the message we're trying to deliver, is we need to find new ways to support these places. And we need to realize they're really civic assets. Yes, they're places for worship and for fellowship and for education, but they are also places that serve everybody. And that's an important message. And I think a lot of our civic leaders have not really heard that before. And so we're saying, can we come together to find new ways to fund and support these places?
Yeah, so important. And I think it's so vital that we call it out. This is not just for the people of faith. This is for people of all faith and for people of no faith at all.
Exactly.
And whether it's that halo effect or some of the things, we had Robert Putnam on the show not too long ago talking about some of the social capital that comes out of those very churches and synagogues and mosques. And so as you look at your organization, how are you going about that in terms of creating this call to save these sacred spaces?
Well, one thing we're doing is creating new vehicles for grant making and support to really important sacred places. In fact, there's a mosque in the Salt Lake City area that we have just supported through our national fund. So we've raised about $40 million so far that we are giving out in capital grants. So that's one thing, and that needs to grow. We're hoping that more funders and donors will come forward to help us make grants and provide support to important sacred places. We're also trying to help congregations, really talk to their community in new ways, engage them in new ways, invite them in to walk around the building. A lot of churches now have underused space. So we suggest to congregations that they talk to their neighbors, invite them in, walk through the building together, and think together about how they might share that space in new ways, which can bring new energy, new people, and new funding to the building. And it's not just about who sits in the pews on Sunday morning or Friday night. It's really about people who can help the congregation take care of the building and use its space in new ways and really have it come alive again in new ways.
Yeah, and I love that because there are so many things, I think just in my own community where often the churches are thrown open for a blood drive for the Red Cross or humanitarian efforts, and there are so many great ways to bring people of all faith and of no faith into those spaces, again, for some of that good civic connectedness, that connective tissue that's so important. So as you've looked at this, and I'm especially intrigued with all the work that you did as part of the Philadelphia Historic Preservation Corporation and some of those religious properties. Give us just a little sense of that and how that kind of ties. I think there's a unique tie together with all of this and things that we all should be thinking about.
Well, yes. So my work began in Philadelphia, and there are a handful of local programs, but that led to Partners for Sacred Places, which is national. And so we really have a national message and a local message. The national message is, hey, we have hundreds of thousands of sacred places, and most of them really serve a larger public purpose. So what kind of national initiatives might we take? Maybe are there new ways for donors and funders to come together to supply new support to these places? And then locally, we want to help a congregation tell its story more powerfully. We want to help First Methodist Church or St. Patrick's Catholic Church, or, it may be a Mormon place, to tell its story of who it serves throughout the week and help maybe the public realize that, yes, it's a place for that worshiping group, but it's also a place that serves us all. And if we redefine them in a way, it will encourage more people to support them when they need some help.
I love that. Such a powerful thing. This is one of those things that we don't talk nearly enough about. It's also one of those things that when you're doing that, whether you're doing some restoration work, whether you're just visiting a local synagogue or mosque or a chapel or church, you tend not to be carrying your Democrat or Republican card. You're wearing your humanity card and your community card. This is an extraordinary work. Bob Yeager, co-founder of Partners for Sacred Places, and those sacred places matter, and I think they matter in our communities more than ever before. Bob, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, again, that's Bob Yeager, and I think it's so vital for us as we look at these sacred places, again, all across the country, where we're losing, they're breaking down, where they might have fewer people attending or fewer resources. But those sacred places can be extraordinary spaces for us to have some different conversations together in community. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. Our top story this hour: prosecutors are presenting their case for the death penalty in Chad Daybell's murder trial in Boise. But Daybell himself plans no rebuttal. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has more.
We know that the prosecution still has, it sounds like, a couple more victims to call to make statements. But after that, though, there's no new evidence being admitted. So once these statements are concluded, and of course, Chad Daybell has opted not to present mitigating factors or really call any witnesses on his own behalf. So once this wraps up, the jury could go back and work on making a decision on whether or not Chad will face a death penalty. We'll keep you updated as this progresses. In Boise, Adam Small, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden outlined a three-phase proposal from Israel to end the fighting in Gaza. And this could lead to the return of the hostages still held by Hamas, and the return of the bodies of hostages who have died, as well as hundreds of trucks carrying relief supplies coming in, and ultimately a rebuilding program for Gaza. There's no word yet on how this proposal is being received by Hamas leadership. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day now, 277 points, while the NASDAQ is down 154. And our KSL weather looks like a mostly sunny weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
I'm John Curtis. As a small businessman, I built gun ranges to help our law enforcement and our military. As mayor of Provo, I took aim at reducing waste, and we balanced our budget. In Congress, I've stood up to Biden and voted repeatedly against his reckless spending.
And when it comes to standing up to D.C. and protecting our land, John Curtis has done that too. He forced the federal government to transfer more land back to Utah than anyone in state history.
I'll never let D.C. bureaucrats or outsiders tell us how to manage our land.
And John Curtis is the only candidate China has threatened to arrest because John stands up to the communist aggression. And Curtis is fighting to secure our border and stop the cartel's deadly flow of drugs in our country.
I will always stand up for America and Utah. That's why I approve this message.
John Curtis, conservative Republican for U.S. Senate.
I'd be honored to have your support.
Paid for by John Curtis for Utah.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You give and you give. It's time to get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a Samsung Galaxy A14 included with the activation of a Silver Unlimited plan. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah!
Switch to Straight Talk. Find us at Walmart and straighttalk.com. For network management practices, visit straighttalk.com. Requires in-store activation. Device offer ends 6/9/24. Taxes and fees apply.
At Progressive, we know money can't buy happiness. But money did buy your boat, where you find peace fishing, unlike at home with 3 teenage daughters. Because fish never argue about who stole whose crop top, or get mad the other fish used up all the hot water. No, they just swim around, never embarrassed to be seen with you in public. So save money by bundling your boat or RV insurance with home or auto from Progressive. And buy more happiness, or something close to it. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers, not available in all states.
As a roofer, spring means the start of my busy season, which means I've got to get organized with help from Beacon. I can save time with Beacon Pro Plus and 24/7 access to live pricing, delivery tracking, order history, and more. Plus, this spring, I can earn $1,000 and the chance to win a $25,000 backyard renovation just by buying my CertainTeed shingles online with Beacon. No purchase necessary. Now that's what I call a spring cleanup. Visit BECN.com for official rules and to start earning entries.
Emergency traffic and weather together, brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. And here's Ricky Meese.
No relief yet for those trying to get into Utah County on southbound I-15. The crash, even though a large tow truck is at the scene, we're still in the final cleanup stages of the accident at Lehigh Main Street. It is not expected to be completely cleared until about 2:15, 2:30-ish, and that means we still have stop-and-go delays all the way into Draper. Again, this is still blocking all but the 2 right lanes of travel. If you need to go south and get into Utah County, you still want to consider an alternate route, because with the delays starting at 123rd South, you're still looking at over an hour of travel time just sitting on the freeway. UDOT construction alert starting Monday. Plan for overnight and weekend lane closures on northbound I-15 in Sandy as crews begin bridge work. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny and 78 for today's high, warming up to 87 and partly cloudy tomorrow, then partly cloudy and 83 on Sunday. 73 degrees with sunshine right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. In a new announcement by administrators at Harvard University, they announced that moving forward, they would refrain from making official public statements on issues that are not directly related to the mission of the university. So we want to get underneath that headline and explore all of that. So no one better to do that with than Emma Camp. Of course, Emma is the assistant editor at Reason. You can always check out her work at reason.com. And Emma, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so Harvard makes the announcement. Some people rolled their eyes, some people shrugged their shoulders, some people said, "Really?" Give us what we know of the backstory in terms of how they actually got to making this official announcement, and then what it might mean.
So I'm sure a lot of people remember during the summer of 2020 especially, but also a little bit earlier, a lot of colleges started putting out these official statements about sort of controversial political events in the culture. So a good example is during the summer of 2020, a lot of colleges put out statements in support of Black Lives Matter and expressing, fury or dismay or sadness about police brutality. And, for a lot of people who maybe agree with those statements, it's easy to think, oh, this is awesome, right? The college that I care about is, speaking out about this really important issue. The problem is when you start making statements about one kind of political controversy, it means that people are going to start putting pressure on you to speak out against pretty much every political controversy. And so, what has happened, a lot of colleges, especially Harvard, faced a lot of pressure after Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th to release a statement formally condemning it. And they didn't. And it was only after a lot of pressure that schools started to do this. They faced a lot of accusations of anti-Semitism. And so I think what has happened is that, once that happened, colleges realized, okay, maybe we don't want to put ourselves in this position where we have to comment on every issue, especially when those same schools ended up having months of really contentious protests, anti-Israel protests on campus, and, tent encampments. A lot of these schools, so Harvard being one of them, ended up sort of rethinking things. And so what Harvard has done in April, I believe, they announced a working group to consider a formal stance of institutional neutrality. So what this means is that going forward, they basically had a faculty-led group to consider whether if going forward, anytime there was some kind of controversial political issue, Harvard wouldn't make a statement about it unless it directly concerned Harvard itself. And so, to my delight, they announced this week that they would be doing that. They would take this neutral stance. And to me, this is a really good sign because universities have a lot of people that think a lot of different things at them. And I don't actually think a college should be making these, basically taking sides on controversial issues that don't have to do with the college itself. And, for better or for worse, because Harvard is the most prestigious university in the country, what Harvard does, other schools will very likely follow. And in fact, just 24 hours later, Syracuse University announced that it would take on a neutral stance going forward.
Yeah, so fascinating, and really trying to get refocused on what is the university's core function. And we'll weigh in on core function issues and not all the other things. Because as you said, on a college campus, we're actually hopeful that there's really a wide range of thought and ideas and belief and principles that can be debated and talked about in meaningful and positive ways. And if the big part of the university, the voice of the university, is weighing in on things, it's creating all kinds of challenges there. Walk us through just a little bit in terms of their process. Always trying to balance, where's the freedom of speech component, freedom of thought component, what are we restricting and what are we not? What are some of the things that Harvard had to navigate to get to this point?
So there was a report released by the faculty-led commission, and they named several reasons why they decided to recommend neutrality. One of them being the pressure that you're likely to incur if you start talking about one thing. You're going to have to talk about everything. And that can lead to some problems, obviously. Another is a free speech concern, right? If the university takes a stance on a controversial issue, that necessarily means that people in the community who might disagree will feel, not just there will be a chilling of their speech, right? They will fear backlash from university officials if they disagree, right? A good example might be like if there is a tragic mass shooting somewhere across the country that didn't involve individuals from Harvard, and Harvard put out a statement talking about, this terrible event. I'm sure we can all agree that's a terrible thing. And then saying, the way we need to solve this is by having gun control. There are probably lots of people, students, faculty, who might disagree that that's the best way to prevent mass shootings, right? If Harvard takes a stance on that, then they're going to be, if you're a professor, you're much less likely to want to do gun violence research. Right. If you're a student, you might be worried that if you have some kind of hunting club, you might not want to try to get that approved. And so that's really important for universities to remain a place of free thought and free inquiry and sort of knowledge production. The officials at that university cannot say, this is the answer. We know the answer here.
Yeah. It's so interesting to get into all of that, because it really is, to me, one of those core functions of the university is to create space for all of those conversations to happen. And as you said, Emma, if there's this chilling effect of, wow, I can't say this because the administration said this, or all the teachers came out and supported that, that might impact my grade, my scholarship, my future. And that really changed it. And also the dynamics in the community. I love that you pointed that out as well. I want to extend this one step further now. We know there's been a lot of controversy around a lot of big brands and big companies who have gone very heavy into a lot of political thought and political issues. Do you see any ripple effect coming out of what Harvard has decided to do to maybe some of the big brands who have maybe weighed heavy on some of those controversial issues in society, where maybe people just want them to, sell shoes or make great movies?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell when it comes to Harvard's specific decision. I definitely think fewer brands have been weighing into, say, the controversy over the Israel-Hamas war than they did in 2020. And I think that's a positive sign. I think there are reports of things like, a company that makes, snack foods commenting, taking a stand in 2020, something like that, when, making this political statement. And we're not seeing as much of that now, which is good in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are a private company that has nothing to do with these controversial political issues, it's best both for your customer base, for your employees, that you probably stick to that, right? I want Doritos to focus on making Doritos. And obviously, they're free to do what they want, and they don't have the same duty to knowledge to be all kind of
right.
philosophical as I think a university does. I think it's probably I think it's probably better for everybody involved that unrelated private companies probably stay out of making political statements as well.
Everybody just stay in your lane. Do what you do best.
Right,
We'll all
right.
move forward together. Emma Camp, assistant editor at Reason, always brings fantastic things for us to think and rethink about. Emma, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, again, that's Emma Camp. She's the best. I love the way she thinks and how she broadens these things out. I love the fact that she raised in relation to Harvard that it wasn't just the students, it wasn't just the faculty, but it was also the community and how the community interacts with the university and what happens in some of those scenarios where universities are weighing heavy on a lot of controversial kinds of issue, even culture war kinds of issues. And so the most important thing in terms of that space on a college campus is to create space for all the kinds of thoughts and all the kinds of debates and ideas to come to the front. That's what that space is actually for. We'll be right back.
You might not believe this, but 11 of Utah's 16 presidential disasters involved flooding. That's because heavy rain brings dangerous flash flooding to many areas not designed to handle a large amount of water in a short period of time. Fact is, 6 inches of fast-moving water can knock a person down, and 2 feet of fast-moving water can float a vehicle away. That's why Utah Flood Hazards asks you to prepare now to get flood insurance before it's too late to protect the life you've built. When you're aware of a flood watch, stay tuned to media for information and know before you go. If a flash flood should occur, move to high ground immediately. Remember, 11 of Utah's 16 presidential disasters involved flooding, so the cost of flood insurance is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of flood damage. Check your coverage today and protect the life you've built with the right flood insurance. Visit floodsmart.gov and get details. Floodsmart.gov.
Sign up for KSL text alerts and you could win cash. Text the word cash to 57500 for a chance to win $250. That's cash to 57500. Plus, you'll get breaking news and traffic updates right to your phone. Want to win more prizes? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking Utah Jazz news. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply. For an alternate entry method and complete contest rules, go to KSLNewsRadio.com.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. Well, we have cleanup that is continuing on this crash southbound I-15 Lehigh Main Street. Another tow truck, a flatbed tow truck for a large vehicle, is on the scene, and they are trying to get this wrapped up. In the meantime, we still have left lanes blocked, but they've opened up another lane. So we have 3 right lanes of travel that are open, and we still have solid stop-and-go delays into Draper. Again, once this is cleaned up, which is expected to be in another half an hour, 45 minutes, we will keep you posted as when all lanes are open. But in the meantime, you are still looking at a parking lot on southbound I-15 from 123rd South Draper to Lehigh Main Street, and you want to consider taking an alternate route, delaying your travel time, or leave way early so you can sit through these delays with a full tank of gas and plenty of time to get to where you need to be. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have, because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan Sea Salt Body Wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Let's face it, nothing makes you look older than you really are than thinning hair. But what if you could not only increase your hair count, but promote new hair growth without surgery, without drugs with potential side effects, and without a prescription from your doctor? Well, now you can. thanks to a breakthrough new supplement called Hair Grow, provided by New Nordic, the #1 supplier of dietary supplements in Europe. Hair Grow is now available in the U.S. Only Hair Grow contains Tocogaya, a powerful antioxidant that has received a U.S. patent. Multiple clinical studies show Hair Grow is safe and effective in promoting new hair growth. In one study, 95% of the patients using Hair Grow saw increased hair count. Don't lose more time and more hair. Try Hair Grow today to feel and look your best. Available online at Amazon, Walmart.com, and NewNordicUSA.com, or in stores at your local CVS. Look younger and feel more confident with Hair Grow by New Nordic at NewNordicUSA.com, or in stores at your local CVS.
Paid for by Lyman for Utah.
Governor Cox has presided over the worst collapse in housing affordability in Utah's history. Using taxpayer dollars to subsidize large developers is not the answer. If we don't fix this now, our biggest export will become Utahns. As governor, I have a plan to improve supply chains and permitting, to reduce government spending, which drives high inflation and interest rates, and to create a fair property tax system. I'm Phil Lyman, and I'm running for governor.
Phil Lyman for governor.
Do you have an IRA or 401k? It's natural to think of this as being your money, right? But remember, you still have to pay taxes when you withdraw this money in retirement. And you could be paying a lot more in taxes on these accounts than you know. A lot more. Learn the strategies that can help you reduce or eliminate your taxes in retirement. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL News Radio 1027.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Palmas. First, it's just the prosecution making its case for the death penalty in Chad Daybell's murder trial in Boise. He's chosen not to present his own evidence. Second, Israel has proposed a three-phase plan meant to bring an end to the war in Gaza. And third, students from the Utah School for the Deaf and Blind are out rowing again on Puget Sound. Right now, 73 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The Good Feet store, the life you love, starts here.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, for decades, of course, the world enjoyed economic growth fueled by open, interdependent trade systems. A lot of dark clouds out there these days. Deglobalization sentiments take root in the U.S., and so what happens if America loses its conviction to promote free trade, fair trade, globalization? The consequences could ripple around the planet. So we have to make sure we're finding the right way to have the right conversation about the economics of it all in terms of open markets, while also addressing the legitimate grievances there are within a lot of the rule-based framework that may not be making it so fair as opposed to just free. So we got to dig into all of that. Nobody better to do that with than Desmond Lockman, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He researches on global macroeconomy, exchange rate policy, U.S. housing market, multilateral institutions, and has a great piece around deglobalization that we want to dig into. And Desmond, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on again.
So let's dive into this as we look at where we are. Obviously, we've had growth. Now we're entering this really interesting phase where there's just a lot of isolationist talk, and there's a lot of talk about tariffs and all of those kinds of things. Give us first the baseline in terms of what we should be thinking about when it comes to this whole idea of deglobalization.
Well, one of the places that one might start would be President Biden's recent decision to slap on 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, as well as on a whole bunch of other products. And the fact that he didn't roll back the tariffs that President Trump placed on $360 billion of Chinese goods. So this is of concern because through the post-war period, the United States was the country that was driving the free trade idea, getting many countries to reduce trade restrictions. And that ushered in a period of really very good growth. You know, the period between 1945 and 1975 was amongst the fastest growing that the world's had, and in no small measure because countries were trading with one another. They were taking advantage of their comparative advantages, their increasing competition, all those sort of good things came out. So one really has to worry that now the United States is acting unilaterally, just imposing tariffs. They might have good reason to be upset with the Chinese, but it's of concern that we're moving in that direction. And what it looks like now in the election cycle, that Biden and Trump are trying to outcompete one another as to who is going to be more protectionist.
Yeah.
So this is something that we've really got to worry about, amongst other things.
Yeah, I think it has become a tariff duel to see you're going to do 100%. Well, I'm going to do 110%. I'll show you.
Well, that's basically what occurred. Is that when Biden put on the 100% tariff, Trump wasn't going to be outdone. So he said if he gets into office, he'll put a 200% tariff on electric vehicles. And what's more, he won't restrict his trade protectionism to China. He'll do it across the board. So he's talking about a 10% tariff that he's going to put on all the other countries. So that is really dangerous, because what that would do is it would invite retaliation. And we've been there before. This is what occurred in the 1930s. One country does something, the other country reacts. We get into a downward spiral, and what occurs is everybody loses.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting thing, especially in an election year. How much of that is the chatter of the political class and the posturing. And then talk to us for just a second, Desmond, in terms of some of the things that you even mentioned in your piece, that there are some legitimate concerns in terms of the fair trade part of the free trade, and some of those things where some tariffs or sanctions or grievances are at least going to be aired. How do we navigate through that to, again, ensure that we're having all the right dynamics so that economy continues to flourish?
Yeah, the situation is pretty complicated. It's one thing that's complicating the situation is that China is experiencing a housing and credit market bust, something like we had in 2008, 2009. And what they're finding is that they landed with a huge bunch of overcapacity in industrial goods. And what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to export that abroad. And they're doing this in a way that seems to be unfair. So you've got that kind of pressure, but it would seem that if we're wanting to do this in an orderly way, this needs to be done with bilateral negotiations or multilateral setting, trying to get the countries to abide by some sort of rules rather than have a free fall. But my concern is that the real pressures that are going to make this really very difficult, in the sense that China its economic miracle has come to an end. It looks like it's on a very slow growth path. So they're going to be tempted to let the exchange rate depreciate and to try to export their way out of their problems. And that is really highly problematic, not just for the United States. Right. It's going to be problematic for Europe. It's going to be problematic for the world. You're talking about the second world's largest economy, a major export power. So, we've got the Chinese situation is problematic, and we've also got the Japanese situation.
Right.
What we're seeing is the Japanese currency, because they've got such bad public finances and they're in a bind. They can't raise the interest rates to protect their currency, because that would then complicate their public finances. So we're seeing the yen is now at levels that we haven't seen for 30 years. It's around about 156, 157 to the dollar. And it means that they're going to be a source of exports to the United States and the rest of the world. And, people are going to be saying, well, this is unfair. So this is really a situation where we need United States leadership
to lead. And
I'm afraid that the United States, seems to be relinquishing that role, rather just worrying about itself.
Great perspective, Desmond Lockman, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks so much for joining us today. Great stuff. Important things to be thinking about in terms of how do we keep that economic engine rolling all the way around the world. And Desmond was right on. It takes American leadership. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Inside Sources coming up next.
KS KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Family members of J.J. Ryan or J.J. Vallow, and Tylee Ryan told the court in Boise what losing those children has meant to them as the jury considers whether to impose the death penalty on Chad Daybell. He was convicted in the murders of those children and his first wife, Tammy Daybell. He's chosen not to present mitigating evidence in the case. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden has announced an Israeli proposal to end the 8-month war with Hamas.
Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove whether they really mean it.
The three-phase plan aimed at a permanent end to hostilities between Israel and Hamas and a rebuilding of Gaza. There's been no response yet from Hamas. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 577 points today, while the NASDAQ was down substantially earlier, but now down only by a couple of points. And our KSL weather looks like a partly cloudy weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright with yet another great experiment you can try right there at home. I want you to take 4 bags of water softener salt. Lift 3 of the bags with one hand, good luck on that, and 1 bag with your other hand. Now, if you're like most people, you'll probably find that 3 bags of salt weigh about 3 times as much as 1 bag of salt. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're shopping for a water softener. You see, Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are so well designed, they use only 1 bag of salt for every 3 that other water softeners use. Now, I can't speak for you, but I'm not a fan of lower back pain, and as our little experiment has hopefully demonstrated, carrying that 1 bag of salt, it's a lot easier on your back than carrying 3. That's just one of the many reasons you should look into water softeners from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. To learn more, call Connecticut of Utah, 801-576-8600, or go to softwaterutah.com.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
You know, Deb, you and I have had this conversation so many times. We think, I wish I had a little more light here or maybe a ceiling fan there.
That's why we love Master Electrical. So anytime we have an electrical problem, we know we can call them and they will give us their upfront pricing guarantee.
Because we're not going to do it yourself. We're going to leave it to the professionals. And this upfront pricing guarantee is fantastic. I'm sure you've been bitten by bids in the past where they say, that's going to take half a day. And then 2 weeks later, the bid and the invoice have nothing to do with each other.
Not only will you get their upfront pricing guarantee, but you will never see an upcharge. Their pricing system simply won't allow it.
Master Electrical proudly serves from Logan to Santaquin.
They do everything that has to do with electrical, and they're always open, including for emergency services. The phone number to call is 801-543-2222.
801-543-2222, or check them out online at masterelectrical.com.
Emergency traffic brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. Here's Ricky Meese.
3 left lanes blocked still with this accident. Southbound I-15 Lehigh Main Street. A couple of different tow trucks trying to get everything loaded with this crash, and which included a travel trailer. So this cleanup is still taking quite a while. They were hoping to have it open in about 15 to 30 minutes. Not sure that's going to happen, but they are making progress. In the meantime, the parking lot continues on southbound I-15 with slow and go and stop and go delays going from 123rd South Draper to Lehigh Main Street. Again, you do want to consider an alternate route or try to delay your travel time. Need a perfect event venue? There's a place. This is the place, Heritage Park. Ideal for weddings, events, featuring 11 venues, beautiful grounds, affordability for any celebration. Call or visit thisistheplace.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny and 78 for the high today, warming up to 87 and partly cloudy tomorrow, then partly cloudy and 83 on Sunday. Right now, 75 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, normally what a president or a White House communication team puts out on a Friday afternoon is called putting it out with the trash, hoping it will be forgotten over the weekend so you can get back to work on your agenda come Monday. But today, President Biden taught everybody to maybe think again about what happens on an afternoon in Washington, D.C. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
A little bit earlier today, President Biden gave a pretty amazing press conference announcing the latest efforts to end the war raging in Gaza, returning all remaining hostages to their families. The proposed ceasefire plan he announced, led by Israel, this is Israel's plan, could end the devastating war and has the potential to reshape the direction of the Middle East. It's a big deal, and I think it's a chance for a more peaceful future there as well. And I think it's so important to look at this. I was critical of the president earlier in the program that he began this press conference, which I think was a big, big deal. But he began the press conference talking about the former president and the case that was just decided in New York. I thought that was a massive mistake by the president. He created an equivalence between the former president's hush money case and something that could be transformational as it relates to the Middle East. That part was a mistake, I think, for the president. Now, I criticize the president. Now let me commend the president. I thought he delivered a very powerful speech that I think was important in terms of framing and shaping the conversation moving forward. So regardless of where you fall in terms of support or being against the state of Israel, however you feel about what's happened in Gaza, Hamas, the innocent Palestinians, I want you to listen to how this is framed and shaped, because I think this is actually a path forward. I think this matters. I think the president was speaking today, not just to leaders here at home, not just to the citizens of this country, but to people around the world. This was an important moment. The president announced the main points being negotiated in this proposal. Again, this is a proposal being put forward by Israel, and then with Qatar and Egypt working as the proxies, has been delivered to Hamas. So here's the framework that President Biden laid out for a path to permanent peace.
This new proposal has 3 phases. The first phase would last for 6 weeks. Here's what it would include: a full and complete ceasefire, a withdrawal of Israeli forces from all populated areas of Gaza, release of a number of hostages, including women, the elderly, the wounded, in exchange for release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. There are American hostages who would be released at this stage, and we want them home. Palestinian civilians would return to their homes and neighborhoods in all areas of Gaza. Humanitarian assistance would surge, with 600 trucks carrying aid into Gaza every single day. Hundreds of thousands of temporary shelters, including housing units, would be delivered by the international community. All that and more would begin immediately.
Those are all significant developments. The president went on to say that phase 2 of this proposal wouldn't begin until all the agreements are reached. That second stage would involve the release of all the remaining living hostages in exchange for Palestinians imprisoned in Israel. The final phase would be the start of a major reconstruction plan in Gaza. And any final remains of any of the hostages that were lost in what took place from October 7th until now, those would be returned to families as well. So as we look at this, the president framed out the plan as an alternate to further degradation and war in the region and a better, more secure future for the Palestinian people and for the people of Israel.
A comprehensive approach that starts with this deal will bring hostages home and will lead to more secure Israel. And once a ceasefire and hostage deal is concluded, it unlocks the possibility of a great deal more progress, including calm along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. The United States will help forge a diplomatic resolution, one that ensures Israel's security and allows people to safely return to their homes without fear of being attacked. All this would create the conditions for a different future, a better future for the Palestinian people, one of self-determination, dignity, security, and freedom.
Dignity, personal ability to move forward in the way that they want for the Palestinian people as well as for the people of Israel. I think those were all important framing. It wasn't about Hamas. It was about the Palestinian people. It wasn't about Israel going in and occupying. A lot of this focused on what happens the day after all of this gets done. Now, really important, and I thought the president did a great job of this today. He talked about the hurdles that could derail this deal. And he was equal opportunity offender. So he talked about what could derail it from the Hamas standpoint, and he also talked about it from inside the Israeli government standpoint. Take a listen.
Everyone who wants peace now must raise their voices and let the leaders know they should take this deal, work to make it real, make it lasting, and forge a better future out of the tragic terror attack and war. It's time to begin this new stage. For the hostages to come home, for Israel to be secure, for the suffering to stop. It's time for this war to end, for the day after to begin.
So it is time to rebuild, to get to that day after portion of the program. I think that was so significant for the president. And he said, if you're one of those calling for peace now, you need to call for Hamas to accept this deal. And there's nothing in this deal that is bad for the Palestinian people. The president outlined very specifically some of those core things in terms of the amount of aid that would immediately be infused in phase 1, the surge of relief that would be administered to the Palestinian people, the security that would be in place in terms of Israel. He actually talked about it creating a more secure place for the Israelis, especially in the north. So there's a host of things within this proposed framework that the president laid out today that I think is significant. I think it's important. And I think the president did a good job of laying it out today. And now, really, the eyes of the world are going to be on Hamas. Now, the president did point out there are some inside of Israel who are not going to be content until Hamas is completely wiped out. And they will be ones maybe countering the proposal that has come out of the Netanyahu administration. There will be those inside Hamas who clearly don't want things to end because they end. That's part of this. They don't continue to be the leader. They are not the voice of the Palestinian people. And so there are a lot of complexities. There's a lot of things that have to be negotiated and worked out. But I think this is an important moment. We should note this, and we should also note that on this same day that this new proposal came out from Israel to, again, get to peace and a sustained peace, to get the hostages home, to get relief to the Palestinians, and to rebuild Gaza for the future, on this day, a bipartisan group of leaders from the House and the Senate, the four main leaders, extended an invitation to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to come address a joint session of Congress. That's an important addition to what was laid out today by President Biden on a Friday. Again, usually when things go a little bit more quiet, things that are very important have been begun and started and initiated, and we'll see if they can get root and we can actually get to that peace, get the hostages home, and create a space where Israel can be secure and where the Palestinians in Gaza can have confidence in self-determination and self-rule moving forward.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Just some breaking news coming up out of Idaho. Our own Adam Small in relationship to what is happening at the Daybell, going into the next phase of this. Adam, what do you know?
Well, Boyd, what happened is the jury just a couple minutes ago has begun their deliberations in specifically the penalty phase of this capital murder trial. As people have heard all since yesterday, Chad was found guilty of all 8 counts. He was charged against, including multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud. And we've already gone through all of the victim impact statement. No new evidence presented, but Chad opted not to present any mitigating factors that could potentially sway the jury to not give him the death penalty, to just give him life in prison without parole. Chad, it sounds like, opted not to do that. The state put forward a plethora of witnesses, victims that testify to the impact this case has had. And the jury is now, as we speak, deliberating, deciding whether or not Chad Daybell will end up on death row.
Any surprises up there, Adam, in terms of how swiftly this went and the fact that Chad Daybell chose not to make any statements?
I was not necessarily super surprised that Chad opted not to make a statement. I mean, he has remained quiet and closed off this entire trial, opting not to, plead his case, like make a statement himself during the evidence and the actual criminal portion of this case. But I was very surprised that the defense did not put forward a single witness. There was no new evidence brought forward by either side. And it sounds like it was by Chad's request that he of his own free will decided, I don't even want to, in essence, fight what the state is alleging, that there are aggravating factors that they argue justify putting him on death row. And Chad basically did not put up any resistance to that. So that is the biggest thing that surprised me here today. And in terms of timing, we've been in here for 4 hours in court today, and we're a little over, maybe 24 hours removed from the verdict yesterday. This is moving incredibly fast.
Yeah, fascinating stuff that the jury is now deliberating in the penalty phase. Again, no new information or witnesses brought forward by the defense in all of this. Adam Small joining us live. Adam, thanks for the report. We'll stay tuned as we'll bring you all the updates as this continues to move forward at a very, very fast pace. We'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Once you've logged out, punch in.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio.
Put Jeff Kaplan in the passenger seat with traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the 9s, breaking news, and the day's biggest stories. Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Emergency traffic continues on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. It does not look like the time to have this cleared is going to be met at 2:15, 2:20. Emergency crews still on the scene. The final cleanup of this serious injury accident. Southbound I-15 Lehigh Main Street still blocking 3 left lanes of traffic. And even though the tow trucks, these are huge tractor trailer tow trucks that are there trying to clean up this travel trailer and other vehicles involved in this accident, still working the scene. It's going to take a little bit longer. And that means we still have a parking lot sitting on southbound I-15 from Draper to Lehigh. Those delays start just after 114 South. Also, I want to make it clear, if you're trying to enter southbound I-15 at any point on-ramp between Draper and Lehigh, they're jam-packed. Again, traffic is just not moving. If you need to travel into Utah County, you do want to use an alternate route or even think about delaying your travel time. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have, because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan Sea Salt Body Wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
What's keeping you from learning the language you've always wanted to speak?
Too hard. Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's interactive lessons, podcasts, games, and more make learning fun.
Fun isn't hard.
Right. And in 10 minutes a day, Babbel's bite-sized lessons are designed to get you having real conversations in as little as 3 weeks.
That's not long. It's not hard. It's perfect.
It starts here. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
In Utah, we don't make excuses. We work hard. We do what's right. We get it done. Washington, D.C. could learn a lesson from Utah and from Republican John Curtis. John Curtis is our first line of defense against Joe Biden's policies that have made life harder in Utah. In Congress, John's known as the get-it-done guy. He passed 15 bills that make us safer and stronger. John Curtis is reducing regulations so Utah small businesses can grow and you can afford your energy bills. And as always, he's fighting for American energy dominance as our champion for affordable, reliable, and clean energy. When Utah thrives, America thrives. John Curtis knows that, and in the U.S. Senate, he'll teach Washington how we do it in Utah. John Curtis, working hard and getting it done the Utah way. ClearPath Action Fund paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. ClearPathActionFund.org.
If you've got a honey-do list with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air conditioning projects on it, Any Hour Services can help. Call Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. AnyHourServices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, Chad Daybell told the court in Boise this morning he will not present his own evidence in the penalty phase of his murder trial. Second, President Biden outlined a three-phase proposal that could lead to an end to 8 months of fighting in Gaza. And third, an organization representing school guidance counselors says Utah schools don't have nearly enough. 75 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, it is Boyd Matheson, and as we look at all the fallout over the last 24 hours from the criminal conviction of former President Donald Trump, really setting us into some uncharted territory in American history. And while the nation grapples with the reality of the former president being found guilty of felonies, the pivotal question looming regarding the implication for the presidential campaign, the election, the integrity of all of that, what comes next. We want to get into that for a moment, just in terms of what is next. And we want to get past a lot of the chatter and clamor out there that is often a distraction. I'm sure your email box has been filled with fundraising emails, whether you're getting them from the left or the right. If they're coming from the left, you have to save the world from a convicted felon. If it's from the right, it's a kangaroo court and blah, blah, blah. Send $50. And we know that both sides have done very well raising money over the last 24 hours. But we want to get to some of the practical tacticals in terms of what's the reality, and let's start looking at process in terms of what comes next or what might come next. And, of course, we always turn to our friends at the Dispatch to help us get to the sure foundation, the sure footing there. Michael Warren's senior editor at the Dispatch. And, Michael, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me, Boyd.
Michael, you and our good friend Sarah Isger did a great breakdown in terms of just the facts. What do we know for sure in terms of what comes next and how this all moves forward? And so let's start with that in terms of, we know there is a date, a sentencing date for July 11th, just a little bit before the Republicans are set to convene in Milwaukee. What is it that we're expecting at that particular hearing? What are you anticipating there?
Well, I don't want to get out in front of my skis and say this is what the sentence will be, and so that with that caveat, and really a general caveat during this conversation, there's a lot, as you said at the intro, that we don't know because this is uncharted territory. But that sentencing will take place, as you said, on July 11th, just a few days before the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Donald Trump will be required to be there. He has been released of his own recognizance. So he is not being held. He can do what he pleases, but he has to be back in court on July 11th. And the question is, what will the sentence be? The prosecution from District Attorney Alvin Bragg, will make a recommendation. The judge will listen to that recommendation. He will listen to Donald Trump's defense attorneys say why that recommendation is too stringent, that is too much. The judge will evaluate all of those arguments. He will make a decision. He will be guided by certain guidelines. There is a maximum sentence for each count. That's 34 counts he's guilty for, of 4 years in prison and $5,000 fine. I'm here to tell you that if he is given the maximum sentence for every single charge, I will be shocked. It will be something less than that. Will it be prison time? Will it be a fine, some kind of probation? That's an answer I can't give you now. Not even have a better idea of that answer until July 11th.
Yeah, one of the things that you all noted at the Dispatch today was that I think one lawyer you talked to talked about the fact that it's pretty rare for those convicted of the falsifying business record portion tend not to be in prison. So that's an interesting thing that I'm sure the judge factors in. As you said, there's kind of a maximum 4 years, $5,000 per. Is there anything else that the judge is likely to be looking at or considering as he hears that on July 11th?
Of course. Well, Donald Trump is a first-time offender. It's a nonviolent crime. He a flight risk. I mean, these are all the kind of factors to consider. It's possible that the judge sort of makes a political calculation. Is it really a prudent thing to sentence him to prison? On the other hand, he may decide, and this will be perhaps dependent on Donald Trump's behavior between now and July 11th. He may decide, as is often the case with well-known criminal defendants who have been convicted, to make an example out of Donald Trump and actually recommend prison time. Who knows at this? But all these factors are going to go into the judge's decision-making and his ultimate decision on sentencing.
And so let's look at some of the practical tacticals in terms of you mentioned that the president is out. He's not being held anywhere. He's free to do what he wants to do between now and the sentencing. We also have the rapid fire questions of still running. Can he vote for himself? What happens if he is given prison time and he's elected president? There's a whole series of what if scenarios. Any of those that you're kind of keeping your eye on more than any other?
Absolutely. And I'll answer those and then get to the question of appeals, which is a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
He is going to be able to vote for president, to vote for himself, no matter what, unless and until he's incarcerated. That's the law. Of course, Florida is where Donald Trump lives. It's where he's registered to vote. The Florida law dictates that the rules in the state in which you're convicted, if it's not Florida, govern whether or not you have the right to vote. And in New York, where he's been convicted, convicted felons who are not incarcerated still have the ability to vote. Remember, there's a long timeline as well, not just election day, but the early voting period as well. So I would put my money on Trump being able to vote for himself no matter what.
Yeah. All right, let's do a really quick 1 minute on the appeals process. What does that look like?
The appeals process, again, is a who knows. This will be very quick to say there's going to be a number of paths for the defense to take. Something that, in an odd way, works in their favor in this regard, Boyd, is that Judge Merchant, who was the judge presiding over this case, sided with the prosecution on almost every objection and motion. That is, in an odd way, gives a lot of paths for the defense to say this was unfair and make an appeal. They're going to do look at all of those options, try to find the one where they think they have the best chance. And the question about whether his sentence will be carried out while it's on appeal, all of those questions we just don't have an answer for. But you can take it to the bank. The defense is going to appeal this. They're going to appeal the sentencing. And so we may not have answers to all of these questions for a very long time.
Yeah, it is going to be a big bite and a long chew, as we'd like to describe it. And so we'll continue to cover all of that. And, of course, you can follow it at The Dispatch, thedispatch.com. Also be part of the Morning Dispatch. It is a great way to start your day with some news that get you to the heart and the essence of all the crucial issues. Michael Warren, senior editor at The Dispatch, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, that's Michael Warren from The Dispatch. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Chad Daybell told a judge in Boise this morning he will not present any mitigating evidence in the penalty phase of his murder trial. Family members of the three people he's convicted of killing were on the witness stand today talking about their losses and the tragedies in their lives. The jury now will have to determine whether the murders justify imposing the death penalty. One person was killed in a drive-by shooting near the Murray Central Track Station yesterday. Police say there were multiple victims with injuries ranging from minor to life-threatening. One died later at the hospital. Officers are asking anyone who witnessed that shooting or has information to call them. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden outlined what he says is a deal to end the Israel-Hamas war. The three-phase plan aimed at a permanent end to hostilities and a rebuilding of Gaza.
At this point, Hamas no longer is capable of carrying out another October 7th, which is one of Israel's main objectives in this war, and quite frankly, a righteous one.
1,200 people have been killed in the initial attack by Hamas in October, more than 200 taken hostage. Palestinian authorities say more than 34,000 people have died on their side of the conflict. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day now, 574 points, while the NASDAQ ended the day just about even after being down by about 200 points. And our KSL weather looks like we could see some blustery winds coming up during the weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright, and there is something happening right now at Hale Center Theater that I have never seen before. Theater in the Round, we have a regional premiere of May We All. It's a country musical that you and your family are absolutely going to love. And then in the Jewel Box Theater, we have a world premiere at Hale Center Theater, and it's called The Time Machine, written by Hale Center Theater's very own Michael D. Fox. This is such a fanciful telling of the classic tale with all kinds of additional framework to it that I absolutely loved. And the score? Boy, I'll tell you, 15-year-old Cameron took care of the score, and it is absolutely amazing. There's so many other things coming up. The remainder of the season at Hale Center Theater is just remarkable, and it's time to get your tickets right now. Don't miss The Time Machine. Don't miss May We All. Go to hct.org.
Discover the best of senior living at Trio Orem and Trio South Ogden. Today's older adults aren't wrapping up their life's journey, they're seeking a new one. And Trio Independent Living is here to help them do just that. With a smart, modern, and connected lifestyle, residents cultivate relationships and maximize independence through signature programs like Prime Fit Wellness that bring living well and well-being to life. Welcome to the new age of senior living. Schedule your visit at leisurecare.com/Utah today.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Ally's tax relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
Higher taxes, soaring inflation, record low interest rates, and the skyrocketing cost of healthcare. The list goes on. Retiring successfully today is a lot more complicated than ever before. Learn how you can tackle the biggest challenges that you'll face in retirement today. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio. It's this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL, News Radio 1027.
We have emergency traffic brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. Here's Ricky Meese.
The crash is still there. 3 left lanes still blocked. Southbound I-15 Lehigh Main Street. The latest from UDOT, they have posted that a new estimated clearance time of this crash is not until 5 o'clock. That means we are getting into the drive home, and we have stop-and-go delays from Lehigh Main Street all the way back to 114th South. Plan now for an alternate if you're trying to get from Salt Lake County into Utah County or trying to head further south. And we are starting to see overflow delays stacking up southbound on Redwood Road, scattered from Bluffdale to 2100 North Lehigh. Elevate your home and yard with beautiful flowers for the landscape, porch, and patio from Olson's Greenhouse. For landscape inspiration, visit us on Instagram at Olson's Greenhouse Gardens. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny and 78 for the high today, warming up to 87. Partly cloudy tomorrow. Then on Sunday, partly cloudy and 83. 75 degrees with sunshine right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's time for one of those crucial conversations, maybe an uncomfortable conversation. But when we talk about mental health and substance abuse, we have to recognize how deeply intertwined the crises impacting millions of Americans really are. Those struggling with mental illness are significantly higher risk at developing substance use disorders, while drug and alcohol use can trigger or exacerbate psychiatric conditions. So during Mental Health Awareness Month, and at a time where drug policies are trying to be loosened in many cases, it's crucial that we have the crucial conversation and lean into this. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program today Kevin Sabet, former 3-time White House drug policy advisor and the president of Smart Approaches to Marijuana and the Foundation for Drug Policy Solutions. And Kevin, welcome to the show.
Dave, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic piece in Newsweek, really linking this dual crisis of drug addiction and mental health. So walk us through the connective tissue there, and then we'll start breaking down how we actually march all this forward.
Sure. Well, these are it's a complex disease we're talking about, and this is a brain disease. This is something that, has been really stigmatized over the years, mental health, and now is hopefully more coming out in the open in terms of people to be able to say it's okay, and I want to get help. But too long we've ignored it, and I think we're still ignoring a lot of it in our criminal justice system and our healthcare system. It's still sort of considered something that is segregated, for example, from physical health, even though your brain is the most important organ in the body. But for some reason, we've said that we'll take care of your shoulder, but if you're having a bad week, a bad year, there's been trauma, there's substance use going on, we're going to not really ask about that. So I'm hoping that's starting to change now with different pieces of legislation, but in some ways it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, there is definitely that forward and back, and why we have created space for that to be okay, to say I'm not okay, and get that kind of help in organizations, in communities. That's so important. Talk to us about this connection between drug use and mental health, and just how we should be thinking differently in terms of that interconnectedness.
Well, I think we need to be remembering that, there's a bidirectional relationship. So it's not that there's one right answer for everybody, that all drugs cause mental illness or mental illness causes you, to use drugs and self-medicate or whatnot. I mean, they both can be true.
Right.
One thing I'm particularly concerned about is the normalization of today's highly potent marijuana. If you look at all the drugs out there, believe it or not, more than fentanyl, more than alcohol, certainly more than heroin, more than cocaine, today's highly potent THC products that are up to 99% potent in some ways, sometimes they are directly, related to people, for example, five-fold increase in psychosis, schizophrenia, and these are very serious things. And so, yes, it's also true that people with anxiety or depression will say, well, I feel a little bit better when I, smoke a little marijuana, and then it takes the edge off and I can kind of go on with my day. But really, the long-term research actually shows that in the long term, it's not really a good idea. But I am very concerned about the normalization and commercialization around this country, the growing acceptance of marijuana, when ironically, it's a time where it should be the least accepted given what we know about it now.
Yeah, and unpack that a little bit more for us, because I think that's so important in terms of that. We often talk about it in terms of anxiety and depression and a little bit of marijuana, but in many cases, it is kind of exacerbates that depression or social anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and so on. Kind of walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, so what researchers are finding is that, the way that the THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, works in the brain, is that it can trigger not only in people with a sort of genetic disposition, but even people without a genetic disposition, it can really trigger a psychotic break. And a psychotic break is, when you're totally disconnected from reality, when there's an intense feeling of paranoia, sometimes delusion, you're sort of outside of your body. And the worry is that people are triggered and have a psychotic break, and that sort of happens over and over again, and it leads to really the worst thing in mental illness is sort of a long-term schizophrenic diagnosis, and that is when you're just not in control of your emotions, you're not in control of your mind at all, and we're seeing this triggered by today's marijuana is not your old Woodstock weed, right? It's not your 3% THC. Which people, baby boomers smoked in college, or even Gen X smoked in college. It's really something that has been genetically bred with all these brands. Now, you go to Colorado and you see the commercialization. It's about money. It's about these industries, frankly, just like other industries, making. That's why you're in business. You're in business to make money, and that's our system. And so when you now add addictive drugs to that. It's really a recipe for disaster when it comes to mental health. That's why, we founded this group, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, with former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who, he himself has struggled with mental illness.
Right.
He's very open about it. He actually has a new book out. I'll plug.
Yeah.
It's a great book called Profiles in Mental Health Courage, taking after his uncle JFK's book, Profiles in Courage. But, so it's a big issue, but it's an issue that a lot of politicians want to ignore. They don't know how to deal with it. They think legalization, because it's so popular now, that therefore people think marijuana is fine, so they're afraid to talk about it. So we're in a very difficult situation when it comes to that.
Yeah, and let's get into that space of it from the policy standpoint. As you said, a lot of politicians don't want to deal with it because it's good commercialization. It's a good way to just kind of step aside, or it seems to be one of those shoulder shrugging, finger pointing kind of thing of, hey, that's not my problem, and it seems to be okay, so let it be okay. Yeah. But what conversation should we be having when it comes to policy?
Well, I think we need to be slowing down this train to legalize and normalize marijuana. It's one thing to say that marijuana has a medical component. Its components could be therapeutic for some people, and to deliver that in a non-smoked way, ideally at a pharmacy with a doctor. That's very different than, medical marijuana for a headache or a hangnail and smoking a joint, and calling it medicine. So that's very different. It's also very different than, this sort of widespread sort of so-called recreational, I don't really like that word, but recreational use of marijuana, which is leading to all these negative mental health outcomes. There's a new study, or there was a study recently out of Yale showing how much marijuana exacerbated symptoms for PTSD. And that's really important because our veterans, for example, are coming back and have come back from wars, and PTSD is a huge issue. And many of them, they've been kind of tricked into this idea that marijuana will help them because it sort of takes the edge off and they don't have to think about sort of what, their own reality. But really, it's actually making things in the long term much worse. So that's an example I worry about.
Yeah, so many important facets to all of this. Kevin Sabet, three-time White House drug policy advisor, president of Smart Approaches to Marijuana and the Foundation for Drug Policy Solutions. Again, great piece in Newsweek. Check that out as well. And Kevin, thanks for helping us through this really crucial conversation.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on board.
All right, again, that's an important conversation we have to get to. Mental health and drug addiction, the intersection, the interconnectedness of all of that. We have to have a different kind of conversation about both of these and how they're related. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Dino Day. Celebrate on June 1st at all Sinclair locations. Again, we want to remind drivers that UDOT has updated the clearance time at 5 o'clock. But right now, traffic is being held back on southbound I-15 as part of the travel trailers being pulled away from this crash at Lehigh Main Street. Once they get that off the roadway, hopefully they're going to open up more left lanes of travel. As a result, we still have stop-and-go delays from Lehigh Main Street all the way back to 114th South Draper. If you're considering Redwood Road, that has now filled in and it is slow and go. And that's starting in Riverton and continuing to 2100 North Lehigh. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
So I'm Kate. This is my 4th year with Mountain Heights Academy. They're very helpful because you get that one-on-one interaction with your teachers. And it's live too, so they're talking to you and you're talking to them. If you have a question, even outside of their office hours, they'll be like, "What's up? I want to help you as much as possible," so that you can be successful and get the grades that you deserve.
Mountain Heights Academy is an online public school for grades 7 through 12. Visit our website to learn how it can work for you.
It's Dino Day at all Sinclair locations Saturday, June 1st. Fuel up, saving up to 30 cents per gallon on Sinclair's top-tier premium-grade fuel using Dino Pay. Come early and grab some Dino swag. Remember, Saturday, June 1st at all Sinclair locations.
Love the filler moments at a Sinclair gas station near you with Dino Care, our top-tier gasoline for a cleaner engine. Some sweet and salty snacks for the commute, and a big green Dino for the memories. Find a gas station near you at sinclairoil.com.
Do you have chirping smoke detectors? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you've ever experienced chirping smoke detectors, you already know how annoying it can be. A great first step to try and stop the chirping is to change the batteries. If the chirping continues, it's possible that your smoke detector has gone bad. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't even realize that manufacturers recommend replacing the smoke detector altogether after 10 years. If you remove the smoke detector from the wall, on the back you should find a date of when it was made. Do a little math and you'll know how old it is. Now, Any Hour Services knows being a homeowner means you've got a list a mile long of things to do around the house, and check my electrical system probably isn't one of them. That's why we've put together this radio special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive inspection of your electrical system that includes testing those smoke detectors and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. Call Any Hour Services to schedule at 801-443-7300. 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back, I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you are always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health, Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
My name is Case Lawrence, and I'm running for Congress. My wife and I are the parents of 6 wonderful kids, and now we have 2 beautiful grandkids. We raised our kids right here in Utah and have always felt like Utah is the best place in America to have a family. More than anything, I'm running for Congress to make sure that doesn't change. I hope you'll join me. I'm Case Lawrence, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Case for Congress.
Believe it or not, most small businesses don't have a 401k. If you don't have a 401k, you are missing out on the greatest wealth creation tool ever created. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and many 401ks are overpriced for the employer, have expensive and underperforming investment options, and have tedious administrative provisions. Not at Trajan Wealth. We can set up a 401k for a company for only $8 per employee, a $65 per plan fee, plus a small advisory fee. That's right, not thousands or even the tens of thousands you've been quoted. And do it all in less time than it takes to sit in traffic. If you have 5 or more employees, these 401ks will help you attract and retain top talent. And if you're an employee and don't have a 401k, tell your boss. Call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Chad Daybell has chosen not to present any mitigating evidence in the penalty phase of his murder trial. Second, President Biden outlined a plan to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. And third, organizations that serve the LGBTQ community will be part of Rainbow Alley at this year's Utah Pride Festival. 75 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as always, as we round out the show and round out the week. It's been a busy one, even though it was a short week with the Memorial Day holiday that kicked it all off on Monday. And there's some important things I think we need to go back to. I always like to use a Friday to look back a little bit in terms of what I learned this week, what I needed to think again about what I thought I knew about a host of different things as we go through the course of the week, and what it means in terms of what we ought to be thinking about rolling into the weekend. And obviously there's been a flurry of activity politically. There's been all kinds of things legally in the legal system, and a host of other things going on that really do matter and can make a difference in our lives. The thing that I think is interesting to me, and I want to go back to this, I said this on Monday, that the most important component to Memorial Day was in the original text of the legislation that created the day. And it's one that we are so far afield from on Memorial Day these days. And that is that it stated, not that you shall have a barbecue, not that you shall eat more wings than is above the legal limit, not that you should sit out by the pool, or any of those things, which are all good and proper as you begin the summer. but that at 3 p.m. local time, wherever you are, American citizens were encouraged, invited to stop, pause for a moment of not silence, not a moment of silence, a moment of remembrance, because we have to remember. That's an active thing, not a passive thing. And there's so much that we should be remembering in terms of the principles that those who gave the last full measure of devotion for, and things that we all need to be living for and standing for in the world today. To me, that was an important lesson from Monday that I want to make sure nobody missed, because that's what that is all about. And remembering is something we need to do more as a society. We are so content to skate across the surface of things, and we don't get to that deeper meaning and that interconnectedness that does make our neighborhoods, it makes our communities, it makes our society much, much stronger. We had some important conversations just on the show today. You're going to want to go back and go to kslpodcast.com. Just go to Inside Sources. You can go to each of the individual segments of the show, all the great guests that we have on this program. And we actually had a really interesting discussion with Bob Yeager today about sacred places in this country and why those matter. I often quote Winston Churchill, who said, "We shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us." And there are so many sacred places in our country, mosques, synagogues, churches of all kinds that are in disrepair and that are slowly fading away. In fact, one organization estimates that there's about 356,000 churches, synagogues, and mosques, other religious groups across the country that are getting so small or their funds are so scarce as things continue to shrink that they can't maintain a lot of these historic buildings. And this is not just for people of faith. This is for people of all faith and for people of no faith because it's a civic connection. And so many of these venues have been the place for town hall meetings. They're the place for the Red Cross to do a blood drive. They're a place where people come together to do good things, to do hygiene kits for the homeless, to put together kits for humanitarian purposes, and on and on. And it is important that we maintain those. They're the center of a lot of important places around the country. And quoting Robert Putnam, who we've had on this program before, that these religious spaces, these places, they build and sustain social capital, the social capital, which is really the power of the country. And so making sure that those still continue to have a place in our country is an important conversation. So you can go back and listen to that conversation with Bob Yeager today was really important. We also talked a lot, obviously, in the fallout of the week in terms of trials, the former president and what happened there. But I think the one that we really need to put a marker on today was President Joe Biden. Normally, the White House only puts things out on Fridays that it wants to go out with the trash. And today was just the opposite. I think what the president laid out in relationship to the proposal coming from Israel to Hamas in terms of a permanent ceasefire and a path to peace, I think is very significant. And I thought the president did it extremely well. He did a great job. My only criticism of the president in his press conference and conversation was the fact that he led it talking about a courtroom in New York City. I think that was a massive mistake. The world will watch and look, but he created this false equivalence between a conviction in a New York courtroom of a former president and peace in the Middle East. That's just wrong. And so let's separate those things out. The president had no business going there anyway. He doesn't need to comment on any of those things. Let the underlings take care of that. Let the politicos take care of that. Let your campaign take care of that. You had an important message for the world, and it got distracted. And we watched it in the newsroom. Literally every major news network, we have all the screens up in the newsroom. And when the president finished outlining a historic potential deal between Israel and Hamas to end what's happening in Gaza and create a path forward for the Palestinians in Gaza to rebuild, to have self-determination, all of that got overshadowed. And every screen had President Biden talking about former President Trump's conviction from yesterday. And so lost was the real important moment, the real important message of the day. And that's a lesson for all of us to take into the weekend. Let's not get distracted. Let's not get distracted by things that are great for clickbait and they are great for fundraising. It's been proven. Former president got about $1 million per conviction in fundraising in the last 24 hours. The Democrats probably got close to the same, and that is a distraction to the more important conversations that will determine the future of the nation. All right, that wraps it up for us this week on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference. Have a great weekend.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 77 degrees in Salt Lake. KSL's top story. A day after the guilty verdict, an Idaho jury is already deliberating life or death for Chad Daybell. KSL News Radio's Adam Small is outside the courtroom in Boise with the latest. Adam.
Jeff, we heard hours of victim testimony this morning as the prosecution is